Hey everyone, Tony here. I have a special guest with me here today, Tom McLeod, the CEO and founder of Omni, the storage startup. And if you recall, I reported on Omni raising $25 million in funding, which is amazing. And some of those funds included Ripple XRP. So Tom, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations once again on the round of funding.
Oh man, Tony, thank you for having me. Excited to chat with you.
Awesome. So I would love for you to start off with an overview of your company, what you guys do, what the service is about. It appears that folks can make some money renting out their stuff that's in storage. So you can give us kind of the soup to nuts overview of the company and how the idea came about as well.
Sure. I think the thing to understand is we think about what we're building long term as an operating system for things. So, once your stuff is in Omni, you can do way more than just sitting in a closet or sitting under your bed or in your mom's attic somewhere or in your grandparents' basement. And that started with storage. So if you were living in San Francisco and you had too many things in your apartment, but you still wanted access to it, maybe you
Sure.
had an extra camping gear or an air mattress, you could hit a button on your phone. An Omni driver would show up, a concierge would take that away. We photograph every individual item,
Mm.
and you could have anything brought back to you in under 2 hours. So if you had a sleeping bag, a tent, and a canteen, and you wanted to go camping Friday night, you could have that brought to you. If you had a suit, like fancy shoes and a suit, and you
Sure.
had to go to a wedding or a dinner, you could have that brought back. You could even have it meet you at the restaurant. So
Wow.
it started with this idea of like, what does it look like if you basically built a Dropbox for actual stuff? And one of the big things was once your stuff is up there, if you had files in Dropbox or in Google Drive or any of these things, suddenly you could also do more. And that's kind of where we're at now, which was, okay, so now you have a golf club stored in Omni, or you have a
Sure.
tent, or you have air mattresses. What if you could rent them out to people? So when you're not using it, just like if you weren't using your apartment, you could rent it out on Airbnb.
Sure.
Now you could rent your PlayStation VR or an extra camera that you have in storage. You could rent it to friends, family, strangers, and make money off your stuff when you're not using it. And with that, we're heading towards selling as well and trade and all these different things that you can use once your stuff is in Omni. And what's cool and sort of one of the reasons that the Ripple deal worked is we think of ourselves internally as a bank ledger.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think there's any difference than between $300 or $300 worth of Ripple or a $300 bike in Omni. It's all
Sure.
just asset classes, and there are different ways that you could make money off of them. You could invest and see it grow. You could receive dividend payments from a $300 worth of stock. You could
Sure.
receive interest payments from $300 worth of saving, or you could make rental income off of a $300 bike. And so when you start to think of everything as being on these different sets of ledgers, that works perfectly with Ripple because they want to connect ledgers all over the world, be it banks or
Sure.
marketplaces or tools. And that's kind of what we have. And so our goal over the future is to build this world where your things exist on a network just like your money does or anything else, and you can start to share, move things freely between.
That's such an amazing idea. I was just actually thinking about it and the things that I want to do sometimes, but I don't own, but I wish I can easily go and rent it or get it from someone I can trust. And
Sure.
right, and I love to fish, but I live in a condo near New York City. I don't have room
Uh-huh.
to store fishing poles or whatever I keep in my parents' place. But
Exactly.
yeah, that is such a great idea. So I'm assuming you guys would need a lot of warehouses or a really humongous warehouse, depending on the markets that you're serving or regions.
Yeah, so right now we run a few facilities in the Bay Area.
Mhm.
We're live from roughly Berkeley all the way down to Palo Alto, and we have warehouses in that space. And yeah, they're part of this business is definitely real estate,
Sure.
industrial spaces that we try to get. The way they look is because we store on individual items, we're basically playing Tetris on a really big screen in 3D. So if you think of every warehouse like a big Tetris 3D map, where we're moving everything to get maximum density while also focusing on being able to retrieve things quickly.
And is there a limit to the size of an item or any items that you will not accept?
Yeah, for the moment, we basically just don't take large furniture
Got it.
because we like to focus on things that move frequently, that you want to have steady access to. And furniture tends to be things that just sit for a long time. If you're
Sure.
storing furniture, you're probably not looking at interacting with it.
Oh yeah.
We're focusing on, skis, golf clubs, PlayStations, drones, boosted boards, karma bikes, electronic bikes, like all these different things that you have, but you're looking at how you can use them more frequently.
Very cool. Very cool. So tell us a bit about how the investment from Ripple came about. I believe it was two folks. Is it Chris Larson and I think Stephen Thomas, the two folks from
Yep.
Ripple who invested? How did that come about?
So what's actually interesting is Stefan and I, actually, no, I'll tell you guys a really interesting story. So years ago, my previous company, we were building iPhone apps. And I actually had dinner with Patrick from Ripple in like 2012 or 2013. And at the end of it, we had a whole conversation about, I didn't know what anything was. I knew a little bit about Bitcoin at the time, and we had this great conversation. He was like, listen, set up a wallet on, I think it was rippletrade.com back then.
Right.
And I'll seed you like a couple Ripple, and you can try to send them to a friend and do stuff. And I went home that day and I set up the account and I emailed him my wallet ID. And he sent me some Ripple, and this is when Ripple was, he sent me like I think it was $5 worth of Ripple at the time,
Right.
which was like 2,500 Ripple,
Right.
which is significant now.
Yeah.
And we talked for a while, and he brought us by the office to build an iPhone app for Ripple.
Wow.
And we turned them down like idiots. And decided we just wanted to keep building the apps that we were working on. But I would have been paid significantly well in Ripple 5 years ago to do it. I think it would have been the equivalent of $30,000 or $40,000 in Ripple.
Wow.
In 2012.
Wow, you'd have
would have been a good call if I had done it. So then what ended up happening is I went to a conference in Vienna in I want to say I think it was September, and I met Stefan, the CTO there at a conference, and we were talking about ICOs in this room, and I sat next to him. And I told him that story. I was like, dude, I know a lot about Ripple. I met Patrick, who was your BD guy, and he was like, Patrick's still there. And we just ended up talking. And he was like, what do you do? And I told him all about Omni. And he just kind of fell in love with it. He was like, I'm interested in becoming an investor. I want to start, working on these different things. I want to see the future of Ripple grow. I want to make sure that there's more valuable opportunities for it. I think we can be this thing that connects all these marketplaces and banks and tools and services and breaks down payment systems between borders. And I'm like, I want to do the same thing with stuff. Right. I want to see, I want people to have a bike in San Francisco and be able to rent a bike in Paris, and you never have to travel with items anymore. And
sure.
we just clicked. And as we started to talk more and more, we realized there was a lot of opportunity for the two companies to work together. And it kind of stemmed after that. We got back from the conference, and I emailed him, and I was like, hey, man, I know we talked for a really long time. Maybe we were just in this weird fog because we were at a conference, or maybe it's really a thing. And he was like, no, I think this is really a thing. And we worked for a long time to get everybody on board, and ended up doing the deal in December.
That's awesome. Amazing. And once again, congrats on being able to broker that deal and get it done.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm curious how you guys are utilizing XRP. You mentioned, well, it was reported as well that you cashed in initially some. You're paying employees bonuses, if they choose, and also paying some of your vendors via XRP as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've got plans that, I can't go into tons of detail for around how we're going to use some of the XRP with Omni, the system itself. I feel if you've got ideas, they're probably relatively right or relatively in the spectrum of what you think we would do. We'd probably do some of those things.
Sure.
So expect that sometime this year, some stuff that we're working on in those places. And we're also hiring. If anyone wants to join a team and work on some of that stuff, we'd love to have you. And then, it was important to me that we, I have to think about Omni first. I'm trying to build a 100-year, multi-billion-dollar business like Ripple is too.
Right.
And for that, I have to be able to have operating capital in USD today.
Yeah. Of course.
Maybe not in the future, but certainly for today. So part of the deal was that I would be able to liquidate some of it to get to that. And then, I had always planned on being part of the ride. I said one of the reasons I thought this made a lot of sense is because if we increase the value of Ripple, if we do amazing things with you guys, if we find more novel uses for it that are in line with your business vision, right, then, I think as the value of the token increases, I'd like to see a part of that. So I told them out of the gate, there was no world in which I was liquidating all of it. I wanted to make sure that we had we had ample reserves of it so that if we do stuff with it in the future, we'll be able to utilize it with our customers and won't have to go to those guys. Like, we're not going to go back to the well every time, and different things that we want to work with. And so that's kind of where we're at now. We have, ample reserves of Ripple that we certainly hadn't touched and don't plan on touching for a very long time, if ever. I'd like to keep a world where I can actually transact with Ripple and never have to touch USD ever again with it. And we also have, shored up the ability for Omni to, pay for real estate and drivers and vans and vehicles with USD in the interim.
Sure. So potentially you could be using XRP within your ecosystem for payments and things like that.
I think that's certainly a potential thing.
Got it. Awesome. Any concerns with, obviously, with your storehouse of XRP that you're not cashing out yet, with the volatility? Obviously, the entire crypto market is very volatile, but I'm curious if you have any concerns. And obviously, I think Ripple, because it settles so quickly in seconds, it's not really a concern if you're transferring funds. Not as crazy as Bitcoin and the others, but I'm curious of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say number one is, like, when you decide to start a startup, you're running your own business here too. I think you're signing up for some stress. Yeah. You're signing up for a roller coaster anyway. So, this was just me adding a little more. It's already crazy running a startup as it is. So, I'd say I'm a medium to high risk individual by nature on these types of things. So I'm relatively aware of what that looks like. When I was able to shore up some liquidity in USD, that sort of means I'm not directly tied on a daily basis to will my company exist with the fluctuations of that market. So that getting to a good buffer I felt was important. It was also one of the main reasons we didn't pursue an ICO. Was the actual inherent value of Ripple already existing, that there's already a stable infrastructure, that, even if it moves up and down 100%, which we've actually seen it do in the last weeks, it still will have value. It's still there. We're still at a place where there's an exchange rate that's commensurate with something, and knowing the long-term roadmap and plans that they have, I'm more excited than ever before to actually be a holder in this case, and potentially even controlling a little bit of my own fate by doing amazing stuff with my own company that way. So, you know what? I open CoinMarketCap once a day. I look at it for my own hobby and crypto stuff I do on the side myself, and I look at it from Omni, and then I close it and I go to work, and I work on building tools and services that can utilize XRP, as well as trying to build this operating system for people's things.
Awesome. Now, obviously, your company received the funds in XRP. Are you personally, out of your own funds, are you invested in XRP?
I had that 2,500 that Patrick gave me 4 years ago. Still have that original 2,500, as a matter of fact. I moved it to GateHub, and I moved it all around. I kept as they kept changing everything. And yes, I'm a personal Ripple investor as well.
Got it. Any other cryptos you're a fan of?
That's interesting, man. I think when you look at cryptos, everything has a different purpose. Yeah. I'm long on things that are creating actual value. Yeah. That I think that they're having novel technology around what they're doing. I wouldn't want to give investment advice around specific things because of that. But if you were looking at my personal sort of portfolio, it would be people that are solving existing problems, that I think this is a novel use case for. There's this guy, Greg Osuri, who runs a company called Overclock. Mm-hmm. And I also met him in Vienna, and he told me this really interesting thing around the way he builds his portfolio. And he feels that the blockchain in general is obviously and truly, we're standing in front of the internet again, and it's 1988, right? Right. And he's like, if you could have invested in HTTP, or the people who created HTTP could have actually seen value for the amount of times it gets used every day, the amount of times a person in a web browser goes to http.google.com, you would have seen a fraction of a percent of a piece of that. You would be one of the richest people on the planet, right? Oh, yeah. Or every time an SSL certificate is used to secure a website, or every time someone downloads a torrent if the torrent protocol that connected all that, you actually received a piece of it. And so he's looking at tokens and coins and services and technologies built on the blockchain that are already validated because they exist on the internet.
Sure.
And this is updated versions of that. So you've got coins like Civic, which is interesting for doing personal identity, and you have all these different things that are sort of stuff that, like, okay, I see how that worked in the original internet, and this is going to have to exist here, so maybe you should look down that path. And I think actual value creation services are where it's at, not just like, this industry needs a coin, so we're going to make one. Yeah, that seems silly.
Yeah, I take the same approach. Is it actually solving a problem like a normal business would? So yeah, absolutely on the same page with you there. So I know we kind of covered this a bit, but what do you think about Ripple in the long term? I know they're partnering with banks, money transfer companies. I'm just curious what from your perspective, where you see, and you've spoken to some of the folks directly, where do you see them like in the next few years?
Yeah, so I mean, there's no world in which I'm not long on Ripple, right? Because I did a large scale deal with them, so it would be impossible for me not to be biased at this point. So I would expect everyone to write this guy's biased in a comment, right? But I also wouldn't have put my company in some degree into bed with another company, which is kind of what this looks like. If this is the future of fundraising, companies working together to build bigger companies and have long tail upside, then you have to make a decision that this is someone that you want to be partnered with. And what I look at it is, I don't know if Ripple is a global singular currency. I don't know if that ever exists. I don't know if one of the 500 tokens we see now is the one that becomes that. I think there's a world in which, if you're a maximalist for blockchain in general, then you're heading towards this idea where you think there'll be global currencies or fully blockchain, like networks fully created on the blockchain that actually create massive value for international payments or international communication or just decentralizing the world, right?
Right.
And the thing I do believe is that the fact that you can actually do a deal with Ripple, and while that for a lot of people is the detraction that it's sort of got an oracle situation and it's a centrally controlled coin, is a negative for this, like, well, it can never actually be the global currency tool. I think if you look long term, you're going to have someone that pushes the path forward, that businesses and companies can interact with and sign a contract with, because there's 200 years of legal contract law and lawyers and bankers and people that have to be able to do something with that can create the network by which the future global currency or any of these coins can actually flow through. And if you're following a lot of the technology they have coming down the pipe, specifically ILP, so Interledger Protocol, they're not trying to necessarily always be on the front side. They're not saying every single day I want you to go to a convenience store and use XRP to buy a Snickers candy bar. Right. They're saying, hey, if you decide to go to a bodega in the Bronx and buy a Snickers, and you decide to pay in Cardano, if they're in the back end using ILP to manage the float, to convert it into the token that they need on the other side, to do all these different things, then you're still using Ripple. You're still using XRP in the back end, and you can use any system you want. And so I'm very long on the idea that businesses, companies, and the infrastructure that already exists on the planet is going to actually at least have to have someone they can work with before getting to that place. And if you start looking at that, then they're actually replacing Visa, or they're at least competing with Visa and MasterCard and ACH and SWIFT and bank wires and all these infrastructure tools. And it would be very hard to me if they can do that, which they're attempting and are having that happen to some success already in the next 4 to 5 years, then Ripple the company and XRP the token are very valuable entities on a global scale. And so I'm long on it for that reason, because I couldn't have done a deal with the Ethereum Alliance.
Right.
It doesn't mean I don't believe in Ethereum. I think Ethereum is a strong token. I also hold Ethereum, but I could have taken investment capital from an individual that owns Ethereum, but I couldn't actually create a partnership with them as an entity because of the core decentralized nature. And you're going to find many other businesses are going to run into similar problems. And so they're actually solving this other side, which is to be able to accurately and easily take Ethereum. Someone's going to have to be able to do a deal with Stripe, or someone's going to have to be able to do a deal with PayPal, all these different places. And it's going to be hard for them to integrate that without being able to say, who do I pay? Who does this work with? who do I call when we have a tech support problem?
Exactly.
And Ripple has a team of people working full time in multiple time zones around the globe, focusing on making this thing stay up, work, and be faster every day if possible. And that's, as a guy who runs a business that has to work with other businesses, I don't see that disappearing as a necessity for a very long time.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely in agreement with you there. Awesome. I appreciate your view on that. So I think that covers a lot of my questions on, your XRP funding and usage. So would love to hear what we can expect from Omni this year as far as growth and expansion and anything exciting upcoming.
Yeah, man. So we're definitely planning expansion. It's going to be a bit of a surprise onto what that city is, but we're working on that right now. So at some point you'll see an announcement from me about we're somewhere else and not just the Bay Area, which starts to open up amazing things. If you can start to think about traveling between places and having things meet you in different places, and now you can rent stuff in different locations. So working on that, we're going to be building out some pretty cool things around selling. So actual marketplace stuff. So we're working on some stuff on that. I think that's a clear path forward. And one of the things I'm most excited about is we're starting to work on platform. So the idea that you could build businesses against Omni. If you wanted to create a partnership with other marketplaces, they could integrate with Omni in your account. Or if the Red Cross wanted to build a plugin on top of Omni where they could say, hey, you haven't used your jacket in 10 months. Would you want to donate it to relief victims? All these things should be possible on top of Omni by the end of the year.
Wow.
And I'm really excited to start to build that future.
That's very exciting, man. Sounds like some great things ahead. I did want to ask, because I heard something about it. Is Drake invested in Omni? Drake, the rapper?
Yeah. Drake's an investor. Diplo's an investor. A lot of interesting people there have participated. If you live on a plane, if you travel frequently, if you go from a bunch of cities, the idea that your stuff lives out there and doesn't have to follow you everywhere, but you can still access it in multiple locations or different places is a pretty clear thing to understand. And I think as the world starts moving into more people freelancing, consulting, working at jobs that they can work all over the world and still functionally create and build businesses, we're very much aligned with that. It just so happens that people in sort of entertainment and media are getting that earlier.
Got it. Well, I think it's an amazing idea. I wish you a lot of success, and you guys have a successful year. And I'm looking forward. Hopefully, your expansion is in New York, where I'm located, and I can start using your service. But I think that's it. That covers everything. So everyone, to learn more about Omni, please visit beomni.com. I will leave a link in the description and the comment section, so you guys be sure to check it out and sign up and download that app.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tony.